In late 1999, a guy named Paul Carlton was preparing for the end of the world.
I was totally focused on that for 7, 8, 9 months.
Well, maybe not exactly the end of the world, but he did work at a big Canadian bank, and like so many businesses at the turn of the century, it was panicking about Y2K. Remember Y2K? With the new millennium about to begin, would computer systems recognize all those zeros in the year 2000? Or would they crash and lead to a global collapse? Paul's job was to help avert the potential chaos.
We did about $10 billion worth a day in transactions. So you can imagine one day without our equipment, it would have been disaster. So anyway, I was there at midnight on December 31st, 1999.
And when the clock struck midnight, nothing happened. The world didn't grind to a halt, but Paul's world did suddenly crash. Shortly after Y2K, he went for an annual exam, which led to some tests, which led him to a local hospital, where he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a rare form of blood cancer.
And the doctor sent in a student to tell me that I had 3.5 to 5 years to live, and that it was terminal and incurable. She was shaken, to give, I think it was her first time. So anyway, that really was devastating, as you can imagine.
Then the doctor came in.
And he said, don't worry, we have great pain medicine, we have great palliative care, and it'll be all right. Well, here I was 52. I had a teenage daughter. 3 years, she'd still be in high school. And of course, May. That was my concern. And this bit about palliative care wasn't my plan.
Paul's thoughts immediately turned to his daughter Amanda and his wife May. None of this was part of the plan.
I wanted to have the most aggressive treatment that I could get that would give me the most time. So I transferred over to Princess Margaret and Dr. Stewart, and we started on that journey, as they call it.
Dr. Stewart, Dr. Keith Stewart, director of Princess Margaret Cancer Center, had a plan. He suggested a clinical trial that, if successful, could maybe add a couple of years to Paul's life. Good news, but there was one problem. The trial was for thalidomide.
At the time, remember, thalidomide was probably the worst drug in the world.
Yes, thalidomide. Paul's life rested in the hands of a drug that had ruined countless others. This is Carry the Fire, a podcast by the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation featuring inspiring personal stories about what happens when world-leading doctors, researchers, and their patients come together to ignite breakthroughs in cancer treatment. This is a podcast about innovation and radical hope. I'm your host, Lisa Laflamme. In this episode, clinical trials, the ongoing search for new treatments and cures for cancer. Multiple myeloma is a blood cancer that hides in the bone marrow. It targets plasma cells that make a protein that helps prevent infection or antibodies. As Paul said, the disease is incurable, but he wanted to buy as much time as possible to spend with his wife and daughter. Initially, Dr. Stewart suggested a stem cell transplant. It was and is standard of care and relatively safe with little danger of serious toxicity. But not for Paul. He suffered a severe infection, was placed in an induced coma. His organs started shutting down. He almost died then and there. The early results of the transplant itself were mixed, so Dr. Stewart proposed a clinical trial that was gaining momentum among myeloma patients. It's interesting because for so many of us of a certain generation, when we hear about thalidomide, we obviously think of the huge controversies of thalidomide use in the 50s and 60s and the subsequent challenges with childbirth. So for you, how did they first explain to you, hey, there's this trial and it might work? Tell me about that conversation.
Of course, I knew about it because, like you said, I was of that generation, and it was heartbreaking.
How did he describe that trial to you?
Just that it had side effects, but that it was getting pretty good results for a lot of people. So this is the way forward.
Had you ever even heard about or knew about what it meant to actually participate in a medical trial?
No.
Marketed in the 1950s and 60s for morning sickness, thalidomide caused birth defects in thousands of children. It had never been used as a treatment for cancer.
Thalidomide burst on the scene in 1999, and I remember it very well, because at that point we really did have no new drugs and hadn't had any for decades.
This is Dr. Keith Stewart.
It was a completely, almost accidental discovery. It was one of my colleagues that worked in Little Rock, Arkansas, actually. He was a very adventurous doctor, and he got word that this drug thalidomide might have some effects in cancer in general, and was willing to try it. And somewhat miraculously, actually, he demonstrated quite quickly that it was a highly effective drug in myeloma, and I was amazed it actually worked.
That demonstration was put through a clinical trial.
And we started using it quite frequently. And that's right around when Paul came on the scene, and we were able to offer him thalidomide, which worked when nothing else was working at the time.
As it turned out, Paul had come to the right cancer center. 23% of all patients at Princess Margaret participate in clinical trials, far more than other hospitals, even other world-leading institutions.
Sometimes we have an inability to access new drugs as quickly as our colleagues south of the border for lots of different reasons. We tend to use clinical trials to bridge that gap. So the government is not yet paying for a new drug, but we may have a clinical trial which offers it. And that's why, in large part, our numbers are so much higher than they are south of the border, for example, where patients can access the drugs without having to go on a trial.
To qualify for the trial, Paul would have to meet some criteria. He had to be mentally and physically fit and live close by. He couldn't have other significant medical issues, and he would also have to sign a fairly lengthy consent form. He fit the bill.
Once they're in the trial, it generally involves more visits than you would generally have with your doctor and more blood tests, so that we really understand what's happening, both from the cancer perspective as well as potential side effects. And of course, the unknown of what's going to happen, which is, I would imagine, somewhat anxiety-provoking. On the other hand, I think it gives people hope. I think they understand that if there's not a better alternative, this is something that does promise hope.
Trial eligibility is fairly straightforward for most patients. The trial process, however, is pretty complex.
You have phase 1 trials, which are, we have no idea if the drug is even safe to use in humans. They're usually just a small number of patients, usually 15 to 20 patients, to find the right tolerable dose. Phase 2, where you take that dose and see in how many patients does the drug work. And phase 3, where you compare it to a standard of care to show it's better than, or safer, better, or cheaper, or all of the above.
So, would the drug work for Paul Carleton?
I was committed to the course of action, and I was going to go through it no matter what.
When Paul was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, he was given 3 to 5 years to live. Participating in the thalidomide trial was an attempt to prolong that prognosis. Remarkably, he would remain on thalidomide for 16 years.
And because of this, I got to see my daughter graduate from University of Toronto Medical School. I got to walk her down the aisle, father-daughter dance, and then the two greatest things, my grandchildren, Alexander and Sophia, and they're our lives, both May and I's lives now.
That is really beautiful what you've just described, Paul. Honestly, the gift that you've had these years with your family. You outlined these really beautiful life milestones. One of them is that your own daughter graduated medical school. I wonder if it was watching her own father go through the medical system that made her think, I want to do that. I want to help people. I want to save people's lives.
Yeah, that was a very big part of it.
You must be so proud of her.
Oh, very much so.
This beautiful life of Paul's, one that once seemed impossible, didn't come without some pretty serious side effects, though.
I'd made up my mind that no matter what the side effects were, I was going to stick with whatever I had to live. The side effects that I experienced with the thalidomide were the neuropathy. Had to learn to be careful walking because you can't feel the ground underneath you. You don't lift up your feet high enough. The fatigue, that was pretty bad. And sleepiness, you'd feel tired, you'd want to sleep all the time. And I had some dizziness too, like my balance was quite affected.
The side effects were draining, to say the least, a constant reminder of Paul's condition and what he needed to do to stay alive. Here again is Dr. Stewart.
So in cancer, the way you find a new drug is you start with a low dose and you keep working up until you get side effects, and then you figure that's the most you can give. And that happened to thalidomide. Of course, it turned out to be much too much drug to give people in the early days, and we gradually cut it back and cut it back and cut it back.
At the same time, the search for new drugs continues.
The company that had thalidomide quite quickly came up with a stronger, less toxic version called lenalidomide. And then they've developed a third generation of that, and now they're on to their fourth or fifth generation, each one being a little bit better, a little bit stronger and better in efficacy, and a little bit less toxic.
As researchers worked on gentler versions of the drug keeping Paul alive, suddenly, after 16 years, something was going wrong with the version of thalidomide he was on.
The way we got to that was the blood work, the monthly blood work. It started showing signs of the cancer increasing. Therefore, the thalidomide wasn't working anymore. But it was time to try something else.
Do you know why it stopped working?
Well, that's the incurable part of multiple myeloma. It always comes back and you run out of options. There were several years where we tried a whole bunch of different maintenance drugs, Revlimid, daratumumab, so on and so forth. Some of them would last a while, but then they would start fading away and I'd relapse again. We went through just about all of the standard treatments and drugs. The toolbox was pretty much empty. I'd been through pretty well the whole gamut of standard drugs for myeloma. The cancer was doubling every 3 weeks. And, you can't compound on that very long before you're in deep trouble. And I was in deep trouble at this stage.
Paul turned to Dr. Stewart as he had for 20 years. And Dr. Stewart had a familiar-sounding offer.
We really didn't have a lot of other therapies to offer him, but we did have a clinical trial of a CAR T-cell therapy for myeloma that was available to him. And so we decided this was the best treatment we could offer him.
Can you explain what the CAR T-cell treatment and trial was?
Well, what it is, they harvest T-cells from your body, and these are the cells that go out and find infections and foreign bodies and attack them and hopefully kill them. But the T cells that are harvested from your body are sent away to a lab where they modify their DNA so that they specifically target your form of cancer. And after they're replicated and get of a sufficient volume, they're infused back into your body where they hopefully go to work on your cancer.
They are extremely effective. They are exquisitely sensitive to finding cancer cells and getting rid of them. But they also have some rather significant side effects, so it's not for the faint of heart. But in Paul's situation, there weren't really a lot of other options, and he did the calculations of risk versus benefit and decided to participate.
Those side effects can include high fever, fast heart rate, low blood pressure, swelling of the brain, and nerve damage in the face. So, going into this next trial, did you say to yourself the same philosophy as the first trial in 2000? I am going to do whatever it takes.
Correct.
So Paul had his T cells harvested and waited for about 6 weeks before they finally returned, and he was able to have them put back in his body.
When they put the modified T cells back in, the cancer was killed.
It's just amazing. In what timeline, Paul, did they do the CAR T cell treatment and then you see this dynamic result?
About a week.
Wow, that is remarkable.
And I think in 3 weeks, all of the cancer cells were basically gone. And the graph shows the cancer growing almost at a vertical level, I'd say about 80 degrees. And then the CAR T cells are put back into my body, and it is a vertical line down. So that's how dramatic it was.
Wow. What does it look like to participate in a clinical trial? I'm imagining, a bunch of people in a room or something, but what does it actually look like?
Well, this is the great thing about the CAR T trial. You're completely off cancer medication. You just don't need it anymore. Those T cells are in your body hunting for every single cancer cell that they have been adapted to identify and kill. But basically, it consists of getting blood work done for them. It's about 3 dozen vials, and it's only every 3-4 months, so it's not onerous. And I think they'll be able to take this tool that they have of modifying DNA and putting it back into a person, and not only to modify it, but to design it that it's absolutely perfectly tailored to that individual. So that kind of advance is really wonderful.
I love it. Bespoke cancer treatment.
Very true.
What words of encouragement do you have, Paul, based on your own experience?
Well, I would say, first of all, one word: family. The support you get takes you through the bad parts. I couldn't have done it without them. In fact, I wouldn't have had a reason to put up with all of the side effects and the rehab and all of the other things that occur, when you're sick. If you have that support, and it doesn't have to be a lot of people. I had 2 people, and that was enough for me. And then when Amanda married Ted, then all of a sudden I had dozens of people coming to support me. So it was really great.
Thanks to the CAR T cell trial, Paul Carleton is in remission and off cancer meds. And while the therapy is curative for some forms of cancer, his long-term prospects aren't entirely clear. 20 years of meds, like thalidomide, though, definitely have an impact on the body.
I'm still working on getting back my strength from all of the times when I couldn't exercise, or, for example, steroids attack your upper thigh muscles. It's called myopathy. They wither away. You're having problems standing up or moving around, and now they're coming back. And the neuropathy is lessening. The dizziness is going away. And now I don't feel like before cancer, but I'm feeling so much better. And I'm feeling more normal than I have in 25 years. So that's what I think people that follow after can expect.
What does it feel like to be part of something that is a test, really? A test that could potentially improve the chances of other people down the road through trial and error of them surviving cancer. Do you feel a bit like a guinea pig when you're going through a trial?
Not at all. I feel privileged to be part of it. And also, self-serving wise, I've had great results with it. If you're out of options and there's nothing left and it's the end of the road, why not do something that can advance the research and technology that they use for this? And plus, I have an absolute hatred of cancer. It's personal.
It's personal for so many of us, Paul. I know exactly what you mean.
And if I can kill it in my body, that's great. If I can make the research go so that it kills it in other people's down the road, I'm all for it.
You say it was a privilege to be part of it. And I always think people who are part of clinical trials, it is a gift that you are giving the future of medical science and recovery.
Well, I think I'm getting so much more out of it than I gave in. I mean, it'll be 25 years in January that I've been living with cancer, and it's absolutely due to those two trials. So what can I give that could match that? I don't think of it at all.
I love that sentence. You're living with cancer, not you're dying of cancer.
Right. Well, I think I've reached the stage now where I think the researchers and the doctors are looking to make cancer a chronic disease. So you live with it. It's always with you, but you live with it. And that's what I've done. I've lived 25 years with it. So it's doable for the next generation and the people that follow me. The advances are coming fast and furious now. I was talking to Dr. Stewart a couple of weeks about it, saying the toolbox is pretty bare now. And he said, don't worry, we've got a couple of really great things that are on the horizon, and I'll have something for you. So I think there might be another clinical trial in my future as well.
While he waits for that, Paul and his family are going to Greece for a vacation. You know, I also think climbing all those stone stairs in Greece are going to help your muscle strength.
Well, one of the places that we're going is Meteora. And, you know, that's where they have the monasteries on top of cliffs. So that'll be a challenge.
And I think it's a challenge you're going to meet, Paul. You've been listening to Carry the Fire from the Princess Margaret, a world-leading cancer research center. If you found this episode meaningful, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. To learn more, check the show notes and share this podcast with friends and family to help spread the hope for a brighter future. I'm Lisa Laflamme. Thank you for listening.